The night sky above the alien world was restless. Clouds swirled like smoke, and strange colors of green and violet lit the horizon. Captain Elias Morgan, a lone human traveler, stepped out of his small ship and breathed in the sharp cold air. His boots pressed against the cracked surface of a planet that felt forgotten by time. He had followed a distress signal, faint and broken, repeating in his ship's systems again and again. The voice was alien, but the tone carried fear and desperation, and that alone was enough to bring him here. Elias scanned the empty valley before him. Ruins stretched across the land, structures carved from crystal and stone, now shattered and silent. He felt the weight of eyes on him, though nothing moved in the darkness. A chill ran down his spine, but he pressed forward, his hand on the sidearm at his belt. The silence was broken by a sound, soft and trembling, like a cry hidden in the wind. From the shadows, figures emerged. At first, Elias thought they were enemies, but the truth struck him quickly. They were a family, 2 adults, tall and slender, their skin glowing faintly with a pale blue light. And between them, carried in careful arms, was a young alien girl, her glow dim, flickering like a candle about to go out. The father stepped forward, his hands shaking. His voice cracked as he spoke in broken English, words heavy with sorrow. "Human, please save her." The mother's eyes glistened, wide and desperate, and she held the child closer, whispering words Elias could not understand. The girl's small hand reached weakly toward him, her fingers trembling, her glow fading with each breath. Elias froze. He had faced pirates, soldiers, storms of fire across alien skies, but he had never seen such pure desperation. Why would an alien family turn to him, a human stranger, in their darkest hour? He knelt slowly, meeting the girl's eyes. Her gaze held both fear and innocence, as if she already knew her time was running out. "I'm no doctor," Elias muttered, almost to himself, but the father shook his head fiercely. "You, human, you can save." The words echoed like a command and a plea together. Elias felt his chest tighten, torn between disbelief and an instinct he could not ignore. He asked what had happened, but the family only shook their heads. They repeated the same words again. "Save her, save her, save her." Their voices cracked, breaking into sobs. The little girl coughed, a faint shimmer of light escaping her lips like dust scattered in the air. Her glow dimmed further, her body weak in her mother's arms. Elias knew he could walk away. This was not his fight, not his responsibility, not his mission, but something inside him rebelled at the thought. He looked at the child again, and in her fading eyes he saw something that stopped him cold. Hope, fragile and desperate. Hope placed in him, a stranger, simply because he was human. The air around them grew tense. A distant rumble shook the valley, as if something heavy had moved beneath the earth. The father's eyes darted to the horizon, and fear filled his glowing face. "Not safe here," he whispered, his voice breaking. "They come. They always come." Elias narrowed his eyes, scanning the horizon. "They? Who's coming?" But before the father could answer, a sharp cry tore the silence. The mother gasped, clutching her daughter tighter. From the distance, lights flickered, red and cold, like hunting beacons cutting through the night. The father's voice trembled as he spoke again. "Save her, human. Only you." The words weighed heavily on Elias, pressing into his mind and heart. He felt the decision pressing down on him, a choice he could not escape. His instincts screamed danger, but his heart told him to act. He reached out, gently touching the girl's glowing hand. Her small fingers curled weakly around his, and for the first time, her lips formed a faint smile. In that moment, Elias knew this was no accident, no random meeting. The distress call, the ruins, the family, it was all leading to this single choice. And though he did not understand why, he felt destiny tighten around him like a chain. He whispered softly, more to himself than to anyone else, "I'll protect her." The father's knees buckled, and he fell forward, pressing his glowing forehead to the ground. The mother wept silently, clutching her daughter as if afraid she would disappear at any moment. And Elias stood taller, scanning the dark horizon where red lights drew closer. The night was about to change, and nothing would ever be the same again. The valley was silent except for the sound of the alien girl's weak breathing. Elias helped the family move quickly away from the ruined walls and into a cave hidden behind sharp rocks. Inside, the air was heavy with moisture and faint light crystals glowed in the dark, casting soft blue colors across the stone. The mother laid her daughter gently on a smooth rock, her hands trembling as she brushed hair like strands from the girl's forehead. The glow of the child's skin flickered again, weaker than before, and Elias felt his chest tighten. He crouched down beside the girl, his voice low. "What's wrong with her?" he asked, but the parents only exchanged a look of fear and sorrow. The father finally spoke, his words slow and broken in human tongue. "She is sick. No cure for us. Only you can help." Elias shook his head, frustration in his voice. "Imno jale. Imno sientist. I don't even know what she is suffering from." The mother reached into a cloth bundle and pulled out a crystal shard, glowing faintly. She held it over the girl's chest, and strange symbols appeared in the light, spinning and breaking apart. Elias realized it was some kind of diagnostic tool, and what he saw made his stomach twist. Her heart was weak, her blood dim, her energy falling like a fading star. The symbols pulsed red, and the crystal cracked in her hands, unable to read more. The mother cried softly, pressing her face into her daughter's hair. Elias swallowed hard, looking at the girl again. Her name slipped from the father's lips, quiet and broken. Leora. She is called Leora. The name struck something inside Elias, a weight he could not explain. He reached for her small hand and felt how cold it was, her fingers barely holding on. Her faint eyes opened and locked on his face, and for a moment she whispered something in her own tongue. He did not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. She was afraid, but she trusted him. Elias turned to the father, anger creeping into his tone. "Why me? Why do you believe I can save her? I'm just a man passing through the stars." The father's glowing eyes fixed on him, sharp and unblinking. "Because we tried everything, our healers, our science, our power, nothing." He stepped closer, voice breaking. "But your kind, your blood, it holds something different, something we cannot reach." Elias froze, the words heavy in his ears. Human blood, human biology, something hidden within it. Was this why they had called for him? Was the distress signal meant for any human who could hear? Or was it meant only for him, as if fate had chosen him without asking? He felt a shiver crawl down his back, because deep inside he knew they were not lying. Before he could ask more, the cave trembled. A distant boom echoed across the valley, and small stones rained from the ceiling. The father tensed, fear flashing across his face. "They hunt her," he whispered, his voice shaking. "They do not want her to live." Elias's hand went to his weapon, his eyes sharp. "Who?" The father did not answer, but the mother's tears spoke volumes. She clutched Leora tighter, her body shaking as she whispered something in her own language. The girl coughed again, light spilling from her lips like scattered stars, and Elias felt his heart sink deeper. Her glow dimmed, her breath shallow, and every moment felt like sand falling in an hourglass. If he did nothing, she would fade away. Elias stood slowly, pacing the cave. He felt the weight of the choice pressing harder. He had survived battles, betrayals, wars across distant planets. But now he faced something far greater. A dying child who looked at him as if he were her last hope. He pressed his hand against the cold cave wall, whispering to himself, "Why me, why now?" The father stepped forward, placing a trembling hand on Elias's shoulder. "Because only a human can save her, and you are here." The words struck like iron, leaving no room for escape. Elias turned, staring once more at Leora, her fragile frame glowing faintly like a dying ember. He knew he could walk away, leave this world behind, and never look back. But the truth was carved deep into him. He could not. Her weak hand reached out again, and Elias knelt, taking it gently. Her touch was cold, but in her eyes there was something powerful, something that made him believe, against all logic, that this was not chance but destiny. He whispered softly, his voice steady though his heart raced. "I'll find a way, Leora. I don't know how yet, but I will." The family looked at him with silent gratitude. But behind that gratitude was fear, a fear of enemies drawing closer with every passing moment. Elias knew he had little time. He would have to uncover the truth of her illness, the reason why only a human could save her, and he would have to fight whatever shadow hunted her. The cave grew colder, the night outside darker, and Elias felt the storm of fate closing in. The night outside the cave grew restless. Winds carried dust across the ruined valley, and distant echoes of machines rolled like thunder through the air. Elias sat near the entrance, his weapon ready, his eyes sharp. He had seen war before, but something about this silence felt different, like the calm before a storm. Behind him, Leora's weak breathing filled the cave. Her mother whispered softly, humming a tune in her alien tongue, as if music could hold her child's soul a little longer. The father stood at Elias's side, his glowing eyes fixed on the horizon. "They will come," he said in a low voice. "They always come when her light weakens." Elias frowned. "Who are they? Why hunt a sick child?" The father hesitated, then finally spoke. "They fear what she carries, a gift, a power. They believe if she grows, she will rise against them." Elias's jaw tightened. "So this illness, it isn't natural, is it?" The father lowered his gaze, shame heavy in his voice. "No, it is not. It was made, forced upon her by our enemies, to end her before she could begin." Elias felt a chill run down his spine. A child poisoned before she could live, hunted because of something she never asked for. He clenched his fists, anger building. They did this to her, and now they're coming to finish the job. Suddenly the cave shook. Red beams of light cut across the valley outside, sweeping like hunting eyes through the darkness. The sound of engines roared as shadowy figures appeared at the edge of the ruins. Tall, armored, their faces hidden behind black masks, each carrying weapons that pulsed with deadly light. The father gripped Elias's arm, panic in his voice. "They found us." Elias moved quickly. He pressed a finger to his lips, signaling silence, then crouched low and pulled the mother and Leora deeper into the shadows of the cave. The girl stirred weakly. Coughing as a faint shimmer escaped her lips. The sound was small, but outside one of the hunters turned sharply, their mask glowing red. Elias's heart pounded as footsteps echoed closer, heavy and precise. These were not simple soldiers. They were hunters trained for one purpose, to end her life. He raised his weapon, his breath steady. The father whispered urgently, "Do not let them take her. They will not let her live." Elias nodded, his eyes locked on the cave entrance. For a moment the world narrowed to silence, broken only by the thrum of energy weapons outside. Then, in an instant, the first hunter stepped inside, red light glowing across his mask. Elias fired. The blast echoed through the cave, striking the hunter's chest and sending him crashing against the wall. The father unleashed a beam of blue energy from his palms, striking another who tried to enter. But more shadows gathered outside, their red lights cutting through the darkness. The mother clutched Leora tightly, rocking back and forth, whispering prayers Elias could not understand. The girl's glow flickered again, weaker than ever, as if each moment of fear drained her faster. Elias knew they could not hold the cave for long. He turned to the father, shouting over the noise, "We have to move her. If we stay, they'll trap us here." The father hesitated, but one look at his daughter's fading glow broke his fear. He nodded quickly, helping Elias lift her into a small stasis pod hidden in the corner of the cave. The pod hummed softly, surrounding her with a faint protective light, though her weakness still showed through. Together, they carried her toward a narrow passage at the back of the cave. The hunters outside fired again, beams of red cutting across the entrance, shaking stone loose. Dust rained from above as Elias shouted, "Go! I'll cover you." He fired again, striking another shadow before following the family through the dark tunnel. The passage was tight, forcing them to crawl through jagged stone. Elias could hear the hunters behind them, their steps echoing like drums of war. The mother whispered Leora's name again and again, her voice shaking. The father's face was hard with determination, his glow brighter now, fueled by fear and love. Elias pressed forward, his muscles aching, his heart racing. He knew they could not run forever, but he also knew he could not let them fall here. At last, the tunnel opened into a hidden chamber. Strange symbols glowed across the walls, pulsing like a heartbeat. The father looked around in shock. "This place, it is old, older than our people. We were not meant to find it." Elias looked at the symbols, his chest tightening. "Maybe you didn't. Maybe I was." The words hung heavy in the air. Behind them, the sound of hunters grew closer, their voices sharp and mechanical. Elias stood tall, weapon in hand, his eyes locked on the chamber entrance. The family stood behind him, clutching Leora's pod. Her glow flickered one more time, then dimmed so faint it was barely visible. Elias whispered under his breath, "They'll have to go through me first." And as the first shadow stepped into the chamber, the fight for Leora's life truly began. The chamber glowed with strange light, symbols carved deep into the stone walls pulsing like a living heart. Elias stood at the entrance, weapon raised, his shadow stretching long across the glowing floor. Behind him, the alien family huddled around Leora's fragile stasis pod, her glow so faint it looked like it might vanish at any moment. The hunters advanced carefully, their red masks glowing, their weapons humming with deadly energy. They moved like predators, certain their prey had nowhere left to run. Elias fired first, his blast striking the stone near one hunter's chest, the explosion forcing the others back. The father lifted his hands again, beams of blue energy cutting through the shadows, shaking the chamber walls. But the hunters were relentless, their weapons slicing through the air, striking stone and crystal. Dust rained from above, and the sound of collapsing rock echoed like thunder. The mother cried out as one beam struck close to the stasis pod. Elias rushed forward, blocking the next shot with his own blast, his body moving on instinct. He had fought in wars before, but never for something like this, never for a child who wasn't his. Each time he fired, his eyes drifted to the pod, to Leora's pale face pressed against the glass, her lips moving faintly as if whispering in a dream. At last, the hunters fell back, their voices sharp and mechanical, speaking words Elias could not understand. They retreated into the ruins, leaving silence and smoke behind. Elias lowered his weapon slowly, his arms heavy, his breath ragged. The father collapsed to his knees, trembling, his glow dim from exhaustion. The mother pressed her hands against the pod, whispering Leora's name over and over, tears streaking her glowing face. Elias walked closer, his steps careful. Through the glass, Leora's eyes flickered open, weak but alive. For the first time, Elias heard her voice in his own language, faint and broken. "Why do you help me, human?" The words froze him in place, his heart striking hard in his chest. He knelt down, meeting her fragile gaze. "Because you need me," he said simply, his voice steady, "and I can't walk away." Her lips curved in the smallest smile, a spark of light returning to her dim glow. Elias felt something shift inside him, something dangerous. This was more than duty now, more than instinct. This was a bond forming, fragile yet powerful. He had only just met her, but her trust in him was absolute, and that trust chained him tighter than any oath could. The father watched silently, his eyes narrowing, as if he recognized what was happening. He spoke softly, his voice rough. She trusts you already more than she trusts us. The mother turned sharply, pain flashing across her face, but she did not argue. She knew it was true. She had seen the way her daughter's eyes followed the human, not them. Elias shook his head, his voice firm. No, she still needs you both. She needs all of us. The chamber walls pulsed brighter, the strange symbols glowing stronger each time Leora opened her eyes. Elias reached out and touched one, and for a moment the stone responded, light spreading across the walls. Visions flashed before him, burning skies, shattered cities, and a figure standing in fire with Leora's glowing eyes. He staggered back, his head spinning, his chest tight with fear. He looked at her again, and she was staring at him, as if she too had seen the same vision. Fire, she whispered weakly, her voice trembling. I see fire everywhere. The mother gasped and covered her mouth. The father bowed his head in silence. Elias knelt again, gripping the edge of the pod. Listen to me, Leora, he said firmly. Visions are not chains. They don't decide who you are. You do. Her faint glow shimmered, and for a moment her small hand pressed against the glass, reaching for his. He placed his hand on the other side, the barrier cold but the bond stronger than any wall. The chamber grew still, the symbols fading into quiet pulses. Elias stood tall, looking at the family, his voice hard with resolve. She's not just sick, she's being hunted because of what she might become, and I won't let them take her. The father stepped forward, his glow returning faintly. You speak like a protector, human, but do you understand the danger? If you stay with her, their war will become yours. Elias met his eyes without fear. Then it's already mine. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with unspoken truths. Leora's breathing slowed, but her glow held steady for the first time since Elias had seen her. She trusted him, and that trust gave her strength. Elias knew the road ahead was dark, filled with enemies and fire, but his choice had been made. He was no longer just a traveler passing through the stars. He was her protector, her bond, and her shield. And in the distance, beyond the ruins, the hunters regrouped, their red masks glowing brighter. The war for Leora's future was far from over, and Elias could feel it pressing closer with every beat of his heart. The ruins trembled with the sound of engines. The hunters were regrouping outside, their red masks glowing brighter like burning coals in the night. Elias knew they had only bought themselves a few minutes, nothing more. He looked at the family, then at Leora's fragile stasis pod, her glow flickering softly inside. We can't stay here, he said firmly. They'll seal the exits and trap us like prey. The father nodded, his face pale but determined. There's a path through the forest. It leads to the old river caves. If we can reach them, they cannot follow. Elias tightened the strap on his weapon, his jaw set. Then we run. The mother lifted the pod with careful strength, holding her daughter close to her chest. Her arms trembled, but she refused to let anyone else carry the weight. Leora stirred inside, her faint eyes opening for a moment, her lips moving without sound. Elias walked beside her, his hand brushing the pod, as if to promise she was not alone. They moved quickly through the chamber's hidden passage, the walls closing around them, damp stone pressing on every side. Behind, the echoes of the hunters grew louder, sharp voices and heavy boots pounding against the ground. The red light of their masks spilled into the tunnel, chasing shadows forward. Elias fired once behind them, the blast striking stone and sending rubble crashing down. The passage shook, blocking part of the tunnel, buying them precious seconds. The family stumbled forward, their breaths sharp with fear. The tunnel opened suddenly, spilling them into the forest beyond. The trees rose high, their branches glowing faintly with alien light. Mist curled between the roots, and strange animal cries echoed in the distance. But Elias had no time to admire the beauty. The hunters poured from the ruins behind them, their red beams slicing through the mist like blades. Go! Elias shouted, pushing the family ahead. The father raised his glowing hands, striking down 2 hunters with a blast of blue light. But for each one that fell, 2 more appeared, relentless and cold. The forest shook with the sound of pursuit, branches cracking, soil burning where beams struck. Elias fired again and again, his body moving on instinct. He had fought before, but never with this much weight pressing on his heart. Every shot was not for himself, but for the fragile child he barely knew, yet already swore to protect. The mother stumbled, nearly falling, but Elias caught her, steadying the pod with careful hands. "Keep going," he urged, his voice steady though fear churned in his chest. The river sound grew louder ahead, rushing water crashing through stone. The father shouted, "There! The caves are near!" But the hunters pressed closer, beams flashing past, one grazing Elias's arm, burning through his sleeve. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the pain, his focus locked only on the family in front of him. At last, the trees opened to reveal a roaring river, its silver waters glowing under the alien sky. Across the water, jagged cliffs rose, and dark openings yawned like mouths, the river caves. The father pointed, hope flashing in his eyes. "If we reach them, we can hide, we can rest." But the river was wide and violent. The hunters appeared behind them, lining the trees, their weapons raised. They fired in unison, beams striking the ground and trees around the family. Elias dropped to one knee, firing back, covering every step as the mother and father waded into the rushing water, carrying the pod above their heads. The current dragged at them, nearly pulling them under. Elias turned, his eyes blazing, and charged into the water last, firing one more time before diving into the current. The hunters shouted, their beams cutting into the water, sizzling as steam rose into the mist. Elias swam hard, his muscles screaming, the river pushing him back with each step. He reached the family, his hands grabbing the pod to steady it, his voice a growl against the roar of water. "Don't let go." Together they fought the current, step by step, until they stumbled onto the rocky shore of the caves. The hunters did not follow, their weapons aimed but useless against the raging water. They stood on the opposite bank, red masks glowing like demons in the mist. One raised a hand, pointing at Elias, a silent promise that this was not over. Inside the cave, the family collapsed against the stone, gasping for air. The mother held the pod close, pressing her forehead against the glass, whispering to her daughter. The father leaned against the wall, his glow dim but his spirit unbroken. Elias stood at the entrance, dripping with river water, weapon in hand. His body ached, but his resolve burned stronger than ever. He looked at the hunters across the river, then at the fragile child behind him. "They won't stop," he whispered, his voice steady. "So neither will I." The caves were dark and cold, the sound of the river echoing faintly through the stone walls. Elias leaned against the rough rock, his chest heaving, his body heavy from the fight and the river's pull. The alien family huddled around the stasis pod, their glow faint in the shadows. Inside, Leora's light flickered dangerously low, her breath shallow, her small hands pressed weakly against the glass. It was as if the river had stolen the last strength she had left. The mother's tears fell onto the pod, her voice breaking as she whispered, "She will not last much longer. She fades too quickly." The father's eyes burned with desperation as he turned to Elias. "You must help now, before her light goes out forever." Elias clenched his jaw, his hands shaking. "How? I told you. I'm no healer, no scientist. I don't even understand what's killing her." The father stepped closer, his voice low but filled with unshakable belief. "Not what, but who? She needs you. Human, she needs what you carry." Elias stared at him, confusion and anger mixing in his chest. "What do you mean, what I carry?" The father's voice trembled, but his words were steady. "Your blood. Your kind has something ours does not. It can heal what was poisoned in her." Elias froze, the truth hitting him like a blade. Human blood. Was that why the distress signal had called to him? Why they had begged him and no one else? The mother lifted her face, eyes wet with grief. She will not survive without you. Please give her a chance to live. He looked at Leora again, her faint eyes fluttering open, her gaze locking on his. Even in her weakness, there was trust there, complete and unshaken. Elias felt his chest tighten, his thoughts screaming against the risk. But his heart already knew the answer. If he did nothing, she would die. And that was a weight he could never carry. He dropped to his knees beside the pod, his hand pressing against the glass. "Open it," he said firmly. The father hesitated, fear flashing in his glowing eyes. "It may harm you. You may not survive the merging." Elias shook his head, his voice calm and hard as iron. "I've risked my life for far less. I won't stand by and watch her die." The father touched the pod, symbols glowing as the glass slid open with a hiss. Cold air spilled out, carrying Leora's weak breaths. Her skin flickered faintly, her small chest rising and falling like a candle flame in the wind. Elias pulled a blade from his belt, his hand steady. He sliced across his palm, crimson blood dripping on her fragile skin. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the cave filled with light. Leora gasped, her body trembling as Elias's blood merged into her veins. Her glow pulsed, brighter and brighter, spreading through her body like fire. The symbols on the cave walls lit up, responding to her awakening energy. The mother cried out, her hands over her mouth, tears falling like rivers. The father gripped the stone, his voice breaking in awe. "It works by the stars, it works." But the gift came with pain. Elias staggered back, his vision blurring, his body weak, as if his strength was being drained away. His knees hit the ground, his breath ragged, sweat running down his face. The bond between him and Leora grew stronger, invisible threads pulling at his very life. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stay awake, whispering through clenched lips. "Stay with me, Leora. Don't you give up now." Her glow flared suddenly, filling the entire cave with blinding blue light. The hunters across the river stopped in their tracks, staring as the cliffs pulsed with energy. Inside, Leora sat up slowly, her chest rising with steady breaths, her glow bright and alive. Her eyes opened wide, clear and strong, no longer weak or fading. She looked at Elias, her lips trembling into a soft smile. "You gave me life," she whispered, her voice stronger than before. The mother rushed forward, wrapping her arms around her daughter, sobbing with joy. The father bowed his head deeply toward Elias, his voice breaking. "You have done what none of us could. You saved her." But Elias lay slumped against the stone, his body shaking, his face pale. The bond had saved her, but the cost to him was heavy. He forced his eyes open, meeting Leora's gaze one more time. Her glow lit the darkness around her like a rising star. In that moment, Elias knew the truth. His life was tied to hers now, his fate bound with hers. He smiled faintly, whispering with the last of his strength, "You're safe now. That's all that matters." And as the cave settled into silence, Leora's light burned brighter than ever, while Elias's strength faded into shadow. The cave was silent except for the sound of water dripping from the stone. Leora's glow filled the chamber, brighter and steadier than ever before, a soft blue light that chased away the shadows. She breathed deeply, her chest rising with new strength, her fragile body no longer trembling. Her parents wept with joy, clutching her hands as if afraid she might vanish again. But Elias leaned weakly against the cold rock, his skin pale, sweat running down his face. Each breath was heavy, his body trembling as if the bond had taken more from him than he could give. His hands still bled faintly, the crimson wound glowing faint blue as though her light had touched him in return. Leora looked at him, her eyes wide and full of something more than gratitude, something deeper. "You gave me life," she whispered again, her voice steady, "but you are fading." The father stepped forward, panic in his glowing face. The bond is taken from him. It should not have gone this far. The mother shook her head, tears streaming. "He gave too much. If he does not rest, he will not survive." Elias forced a faint smile, his voice rough but calm. "As long as she's alive, that's all that matters." Before anyone could speak again, the ground trembled. The hunters had returned, their red masks glowing through the mist across the river. This time, there were more of them, an army spreading through the trees like a swarm. The cave shook with their weapons, beams of red light striking the cliffs, sending shards of stone crashing into the river. The father cursed under his breath, his voice breaking. "They will not stop. They will burn this world to ashes to end her." Elias pushed himself up, his legs unsteady, but his eyes sharp with resolve. He gripped his weapon, his voice firm. "Then we make our stand here. They won't take her while I breathe." The father tried to protest. "You are too weak." But Elias cut him off with a glare. "I've been weak before, but I've never quit, and I won't quit now." Leora's glow brightened, filling the cave with power. She reached out, pressing her small hand against Elias's wound. For a moment, warmth spread through him, strength flowing back into his veins. Her voice rang clear, filled with determination. "We fight together." The mother gasped, off filling her voice. "She is stronger than we thought. The bond has awakened something in her." The father's eyes widened as the symbols on the cave walls pulsed with new light. The chamber itself seemed alive, responding to the child who had been hunted, the child who had survived. The hunters charged, their weapons firing in unison, beams cutting across the river. But as they struck, the cave roared with light, a shield of glowing energy rising from the walls. The beams shattered against it, sparks flying into the mist. Leora's glow poured through the barrier, her power no longer hidden or broken. She stood tall within the pod, her small form glowing like a star reborn. Elias stepped forward beside her, weapon raised, his voice steady. "You wanted her gone, but now she's stronger than all of you." The hunters hesitated, their masks flickering red as if uncertain. Then, as the glow spread across the cliffs and forest, they faltered. One by one, they retreated into the mist, their weapons lowering, their shadows vanishing into the trees. The war they had come to fight was lost, not by strength of armies, but by the bond between a child and a human. Silence returned, broken only by the sound of rushing water. The father fell to his knees, bowing his glowing head deeply toward Elias. "You are no longer just a traveler. You are her protector, chosen not by us, but by fate." The mother embraced her daughter, her tears of sorrow now tears of joy. And Leora stepped forward, her glow warm and steady, her eyes fixed on Elias. She reached up, touching his face with a hand small but steady. Her voice soft yet unshakable. "You gave me life, and I will never forget you." Elias looked into her eyes, the bond between them undeniable. His body was tired, his strength fading, but in that moment he felt something stronger than pain. Hope. He placed his hand gently over hers, his voice low but clear. "Then live, Leora, live brighter than they ever wanted you to." Her glow flared, filling the cave with light like dawn breaking after endless night. And as Elias sank back against the stone, exhausted but alive, he knew his choice had changed more than one life. He had given her a future, and in return, she had given him something greater. Purpose. The hunters were gone. The family was safe, and the bond between human and alien had forged a new path. A path no enemy could erase.